Hey everyone, I've got a build video to post, and I'm going to do things a little bit differently this time. If you haven't already noticed, I'm talking. The reason is this is a solo Mantis build designed for soloing legendary content. And there's a couple build choices that I've made that seem strange. There's reasons behind them. And then after going through the build, I'll give some, I guess, gameplay tips on how to use the build effectively, as well as some alternate options if you don't want to use this build in Legendary, but you want to still have a good solo sniping build. But for now, I'm just gonna take some shots, show the damage off, show off the gear, and then we'll talk some more. So, first things first, we're using a Mantis. Obviously, we're using a Mantis because it's a solo build, and it's a legendary, and the decoy is going to be your lifeline. Legendary enemies, as you know if you've played legendary missions, will target you super quickly the instant you peek out of cover and punish you hard. The decoy is something that'll just allow you to snipe without having even to worry about cover as long as it's up, because it will take 100% of the attention. There's some things you can do to mess it up, and they'll start shooting at you even if your decoy is up. That'll take some getting used to, but having that decoy up is night and day. So that's the reason for the Mantis. Now, the next item on the list is our White Death. This I run without a scope. It's a good panic weapon if I have to reload my Mantis and there's somebody in my face that I need to shoot immediately. It's also, what it's used for mostly, is a tool for taking out robotic dogs. When you have Headhunter, if you shoot a robotic dog in the leg, actually even without Headhunter, whenever you shoot a robotic dog in the leg, they take 10% of the damage, but it goes directly to their health. Now, that's base damage. If you crit, or if you have a Headhunter bonus, that bonus crit or bonus Headhunter does not get reduced by that 10%. Which means if you shoot a robot dog in the leg with full Headhunter charge, you can one-shot the robotic dog without having to break its armor, which is a huge pain for snipers. And then you can switch back to your Mantis and continue shooting. The reason I don't do that with the Mantis is the Mantis's buff, or talent, gives you bonus damage to headshots, and you don't get any of that when you shoot the dog in the leg. So for body shots, the White Death is the way to go. Now, the third weapon is a shotgun, and something interesting about the shotguns, which I'll show off, is typically your shotgun does a small amount of damage. We're looking at 187,000 per pellet. However, when you have even the smallest amount of Headhunter charged up, and you switch over to your shotgun, you're at full Headhunter charge. You can see that in the bottom there. And now each pellet gets full-powered Headhunter damage. And we take a shot here, and each pellet there did 2.3 million. It's very useful for destroying things in Legendary Summit that are objective items. For instance, the servers that you have to break or something like that. You can shoot anything once, have full Headhunter charge, and then pull out your shotgun and literally shoot something all the way across the map with the shotgun and destroy it. Because while the shotgun pellets have damage drop off, the Headhunter bonus that comes along with it doesn't suffer from that damage drop off over range. Okay, got a little sidetracked there. Back to the build. The core idea of this build is you need to have just enough damage to one-shot targets at certain health thresholds while having as much sustain as you possibly can. I know we've got the decoy that's going to take a lot of damage from us. However, it's not going to take it all. The decoy will be down sometimes. You'll get hit. You want to be able to keep the pressure on the enemy without having to stop and heal, because if you do stop and heal and hunker down, they're just going to push you very aggressively. So, the first thing we have here is a piece of system corruption with max headshot damage and a headshot damage mod. Now, there's another piece down here, same thing, weapon damage and headshot damage, and together they give the 15% armor on kill. What this means is I can continuously be shooting the targets, and even if I take a little bit of chip damage here and there, I'll heal it back up because my rate of fire is fast enough that killing acts as a healing, which is great because, like I said, you don't want to stop to heal. An alternative, because system corruption pieces are a huge pain to get, is you can replace these two pieces with bellstone pieces. That being said, you'll need to find bellstone pieces that have a natural headshot damage on them, and then you'll have to re-roll the core attribute from armor to weapon damage. So they're also a pain to get, but at least you'll be able to do some targeted loot to try and find them instead of having to grind the dark zone and hope to get some system corruption pieces. Okay, so that's the system corruption pieces out of the way. The next is the Heraldry pieces. I've got two of them. One of these could be a Providence piece, but the reason I'm putting my second Heraldry's down here, again, you want headshot damage. The crit hit damage is just a nice bonus. You want headshot damage and weapon handling mainly. The reason I have a second Heraldry piece is this headshot damage here. Now, I could put something down here like Fox's Prayer Knees. That would give me damage to targets out of cover, which would increase my damage significantly. However, legendary enemies stay in cover almost all the time. And again, going back to those damage thresholds, you want to be able to one-shot a red with absolutely no buffs active at any time with your Mantis. Because if your decoy is down and you don't have any headhunter charge, you need to be able to land a kill to get that decoy back out as soon as possible. And if you're relying on Fox's Prayer and everybody's hiding in cover, you're not going to get that. Also, the Mantis itself has a bonus damage to targets out of cover. So again, if a target is out of cover, you're already missing that huge chunk of damage there. That being said, if you're not running this in legendaries, Fox's Prayer is definitely a fine option down here. You don't need that perfect amount of damage. I'll get into damage numbers in a little bit. Okay, the talent is Bloodsucker. As a solo sniping talent, this is amazing. You'd think something like Vigilance would be strong because it's giving you that extra damage, but even with the decoy out, you'll still take damage, you'll still lose that buff, and you don't want to rely on a buff that's sometimes there and sometimes isn't, because you can be lining up a shot, try to take the shot to keep your headhunter chain going, and a stray bullet hits you, you lose your Vigilance charge, and all of a sudden you fail your one shot, you lose your headhunter bonus, and the whole run starts to fall apart. So, Bloodsucker's an amazing talent. After you get your 10 kills, even if something hits you and deletes all of that bonus armor, you get another kill, you're still at 10 stacks, it immediately adds back that 100% bonus armor. It is an incredibly strong solo talent, I can't stress that enough. Again, if you're not playing legendaries, it's not quite as important, but Bloodsucker is amazing. Obviously, for the chest piece, we want Perfect Headhunter. This is a PvE build. Headhunter is just an amazing talent for PvE. I'm sure you've heard that enough. I won't get into details. Again, weapon damage, headshot damage, weapon handling. That's the way you want to go. For this, we've got the Contractor's Gloves with the damage to armor. When you're playing with the Mantis, instead of a White Death or a Nemesis or something like that, the base damage of a Mantis is actually kind of low as far as sniper rifles go, and then Headhunter, the talent for Headhunter is based off of your base weapon damage. So it actually becomes a little bit of a challenge to one-shot your elites with the Mantis, even though you've got Headhunter. So this bonus 8% damage to armor helps with that. Again, headshot damage, weapon damage. Alright. Those are the main pieces of gear. We've talked about having the decoy as your main talent or skill. And then the second skill, I use the chem launcher. It's handy that you can double tap it and just drop it at your feet if you take a good chunk of damage and you don't have a lot of bloodsucker stacks. You can pop one of these to help heal you up as you get your armor on kill bonuses, just to get an extra little boost of healing. I don't end up using it all that much. And another good thing about that, which I'll get into later, is because most of the time you're just using the one skill, and this skill is kind of an optional plus. If you're using a directive that limits your skill usage, it's not the end of the world. Alright, so something I forgot to mention about the White Death is the talent on it. Normally you'd see a talent like Ranger or Optimist to boost the weapon damage on this thing. However, because this sniper rifle is almost entirely used as a dog leg sniping tool, I've put on Lucky Shot because certain dogs run around all over the place and shooting their legs can be pretty difficult. So having Lucky Shot is real nice just so that you can spam in the general direction of their legs until you hit. And then for the TAC 50, you don't want to use this very often. You want to save your TAC rounds as much as possible because your TAC 50 is your heavy killing weapon. Basically, you're going to want to be using your Mantis for everything you kill. And then when a heavy arrives, you're going to make sure you have a fresh deploy of your decoy, because as soon as you switch off your Mantis, you're going to lose that refreshing decoy buff. So you're going to want to put your decoy out fresh. You're going to want to switch to your TAC 50, and just switching straight to your TAC 50 and trying to shoot won't be enough damage. Like I said earlier, the max headhunter stacks on a Mantis, because it's kind of low base damage, isn't going to be enough once you switch over to the TAC 50. So you're going to switch over to the TAC 50 and shoot something, like a red or a purple preferably, and get a little bit of extra headhunter charge. And then with that extra damage, you're going to shoot the helmet of the heavy, and then shoot it again with the TAC 50, and you'll be able to one-shot the head now that the helmet's gone, and switch back to your Mantis, and try and get another kill as quickly as possible so that you can send out a fresh copy of your decoy. Heavies are tough with this build because of the fact that they're armored and because of the fact that you can't use your Mantis, so you really have to take it down in that 20-second window so that you can redeploy your decoy. Actually, I don't even know if it lasts 20 seconds. Yeah, about 20-second window. So that's about it for the items of the build. I'll go into some alternate options now. I said earlier you could use a piece of Providence and it would be functionally equivalent. The Bellstone option I talked about as well. It's slightly less armor on kill, so it's not quite as good in my opinion. The extra 1% armor regen every second isn't that big of a deal on a low armor build. But some other options for lower difficulty content is you could swap out these knees, for instance, for Hunter's Fury and put 3 pieces of Hunter's Fury, and then you're going to be getting health on kill as well, which is handy because if something chunks through all your armor and your health, you'll be getting that back. And then for even lower difficulty content, you could even start switching out reds for blues so that your bloodsucker is even stronger. And then if you want to play this on lower difficulty content, maybe with a friend, and you need some extra damage, you could swap out the bloodsucker for vigilance and get that extra damage and not have to be so worried about your sustain and tankiness because there's somebody else in the group who can take some of the enemy aggro from you. Honestly, however you want to shape and change this build is up to you, as long as you're hitting some key damage value points. So I'm going to start getting into those damage numbers now. Your really important damage numbers is when your decoy is down and you don't have any headhunter, you need to be able to one-shot a red, because that gets you your decoy back and gets your headhunter stacks going. Now, ideally, you want to be able to one-shot a red even if they're in cover. If you can't quite yet, that's still okay, but you'll find yourself in some situations where you take the shot expecting it to kill and it won't happen. The other important damage threshold is you need to be able to kill elites while in one shot, while you've got full headhunter and your decoy placed. Because if you can't do that, you're going to be losing your headhunter stacks so many times every time you try and fight an elite, which is just no good for the build. Now that we're talking about damage numbers, the damage that this build outputs is strong enough to one-shot the reds in solo legendaries, and it's strong enough to one-shot the yellows. However, if a yellow is in cover and I don't have my bonus here, I actually can't quite kill a yellow if they're not distracted by my decoy. Obviously, if they've got the decoy out, I get that huge 50% damage bonus and I'll be able to kill them. But there are times where, as I'm about to take a shot on an elite in cover, my decoy goes away, I lose the damage bonus, I take the shot and it doesn't kill him. And all of a sudden, I've got no decoy, I've got no headhunter, and things get really ugly. So, if you manage to get these pieces of gear perfectly god rolled, and I mean they need to have your 15% weapon damage and 10% headshot damage, and you need to 10% headshot damage mods on everything, you have the option to switch out one of these Araldi pieces for a Walker Harris piece. And all of a sudden, you've lost your 15% headshot damage, so you'll be doing a lot less damage to reds. However, you just gained an extra 5% damage to armor, and that will be enough to one-shot your elites when you've got full headhunter without having to worry about edge cases where they won't die. Now, the reason I said you need everything god rolled here is because this version of the build, without that extra 15% headshot damage from your second Araldi's piece, can very, very barely one-shot a red in cover without the decoy. So if you manage to get this build exactly, you will have just enough damage to one-shot your reds and just enough damage to one-shot your elites without having to worry about decoys and cover. So this is the ideal, well, I'd put the mod in here. This is the ideal finished version of the build, but until you're absolutely god rolled, you're going to want to use the Araldi's backpack. So, that's it for the gear. I'm going to now switch over to probably some gameplay and basically give some pointers and tips on how to play the build. So, like I've been saying a million times already, since this is a Mantis build, your decoy is the key of the build. You're going to want it out all the time. You're going to be wanting to land your headshots so you can get your refresh buff for your decoy so that as soon as it goes down, you can send another one out. Whenever you're starting a fight, you're going to want to throw out that decoy first before you take your shot, because if you shoot before your decoy is ready, you'll have the aggro, obviously, and when that decoy gets deployed, it might not steal the aggro back from everybody in the group of enemies. If an enemy doesn't have the line of sight on the decoy, they'll stay aggroed onto you. However, if the decoy gets deployed first, the enemies can somehow magically see it through walls, and all of them will aggro the decoy instantly. So the way I do it is, as I'm throwing out the decoy, just as it deploys and the enemy's aggro changes, is when I'm taking my first shot. This allows me to get a nice free shot on an enemy before they all scatter, like they do whenever combat starts, and gets the headhunter chain going. Now, speaking of headhunter, you're going to be wanting to manage your Headhunter buff in an intelligent way. You're going to obviously want to start with a red if you don't have a full charge, and work your way up from red to purple to elites. You don't want to be wasting your tack rounds just to get a quick fast forward to max Headhunter, because your tack rounds are very precious for killing heavies. So try to follow the red, purple, yellow guideline for building up your Headhunter buff. And then, like I touched on earlier, if you're ever going to switch to either your tack 50 or your White Death, make sure you're deploying your decoy fresh, because once you're done doing whatever you're doing with your other weapons, you'll need to switch back to your Mantis and land another kill before that decoy runs out, so that you can deploy another one the instant it goes off of its duration. Now, we talked already about prepping the tack 50 for a heavy, and we talked about the White Death for dog legs. So those are your tools that you're going to be using other than your Mantis, but besides that, you almost always want to be on your Mantis. Use it for everything. It can one-shot every enemy that has a head, and there's not too many White Tusk enemies that have helmets other than the heavy, as opposed to fighting something like True Sons, where the light machine guns have heavies, or the hyenas, where the rushers have helmets. Basically, this build is designed for the White Tusk in Legendaries. However, if you're not playing a Legendary mission and you've got a lot of targets with helmets, it's probably not worth your time to break the helmet and then go to break the head or shoot the head. You're just going to want to switch over to that White Death and land a body shot into the enemy and one-shot them. You're losing your Headhunter bonus either way. Might as well just do it in one bullet, and then go back to your Mantis and start racking up kills and getting that Headhunter bonus back. Another important thing to remember is target prioritization. And what I mean by that is you've got a whole group of enemies of different classes. Which ones are the biggest threat to you? Which ones do you need to kill first? And which ones can you save for later? Now, the two main priorities for me are the healers and the grenadiers. The reason the healers are so much of a priority is there's this weird interaction where if you kill somebody and they get revived, they will no longer be paying attention to your decoy. You will have drawn aggro from them, and even if you have your decoy out still, they're going to be shooting at you. So a revived target is very dangerous to this build, so you don't want the medics to even have a chance to revive anybody. So if you can, take them out before they deploy their medic drones, before they have a chance to do anything. The second priority is the grenadiers, because if your decoy goes on cooldown, there's usually about a 1 second delay of you hiding in cover, throwing out the fresh decoy, and then going back to the fight. In that time, if they've launched a grenade and it's already on your way towards you, just because you've deployed a decoy doesn't mean the grenade is all of a sudden going to switch targets. It's still going to hit you, it's going to hurt a lot, and there could be additional grenades already on their way by the time the grenadier changes targets. So grenadiers are a big threat. You would think that the drone operators are also as big of a threat. However, if you deploy a decoy and a drone is on its way to blow up on you, it will actually change targets and start going for the decoy instead. So they're not quite as bad, but they should still probably be your next targets after you've taken out the medics and the grenadiers. The grunts I like to keep around as long as I can, because they're a great source of Headhunter if you ever miss up, like hit a body shot or something like that. Or if you have to switch to your TAC 50 or your White Death for taking out a heavy or a robot dog, having some leftover grunts is always handy to get your Headhunter going again. And another point about that is if there is a robot dog or a heavy, do not save them for last. Make sure there are other enemies around so that if you mess up somehow and don't land the kill, there's still a head somewhere for you to shoot to get your headhunter bonus back. Because if you don't have your headhunter bonus and you're trying to take out a robotic dog, it will take several minutes, and I'm not even kidding. And then for a heavy, you won't even get a chance to take them out because they will shred you before you can hit them in the helmet 20 times to break it. Some final notes for how to play the build that are kind of more generic. Even though you're probably used to legendary enemies hitting really hard and having to stay in cover a lot, especially as an all-red build, the power of this build comes from the momentum that you can build with it. As long as you're landing your kills and keeping that bloodsucker stack up, so you're getting a kill at least once every 10 seconds and you're kind of putting pressure on the enemy, the more pressure you put on the enemy, the stronger you become. So you can kind of be aggressive with it. You don't have to be shy and hiding in cover all the time. As long as you've got your armor on kill and bonus armor on kill stacking for you, you can lay into the enemy, and the faster you're killing them, the tankier you become, and it's great when it works. When you slip and you lose your bonuses and you have to hunker down, it's hard to build that momentum back up. So this is, I mean, it's a sniper build, but it's very rewarding, more so than other sniper builds, for being able to land your shots. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is, I said this is a solo legendary build. However, a solo legendary mission and solo legendary summit are two entirely different beasts. For whenever you're playing solo, it's common knowledge that the enemies have less health than if you were playing in a group. However, when you're doing a mission, the amount of enemies stays the same even if you're playing solo. So, sure, they have less health, but you're still dealing with 10 to 20 enemies in a wave or in a room, and it can get incredibly overwhelming. However, if you go to the summit, not only does their health scale, but the quantity of enemies also scales. So you have way less targets to shoot, and it's incredibly more manageable. What this means is it's very difficult for me, even with all the practice I've had on this build, to do solo legendary missions. However, if I go over to the summit, I can literally put on every single directive and still be able to function. The nice part about this build is it's kind of directive immune, in the sense that there's no directives that hurt the playstyle of this build. If you have Pistolero on, you can stay in cover and you will automatically regenerate sniper ammo because you're running sharpshooter. If you have cool skills or scavenge skills even, you'll still be able to deploy your decoy because the mantis will be refreshing your cooldown for you. If you're running with hard to earn and you don't have armor kits, it doesn't matter because your kills are what's sustaining you. The list goes on, but you can run this build with tons of directives and get tons of targeted loot and tons of experience very quickly because of just how many things about this build don't care about directive restrictions. So I highly recommend using this build for Summit. If you want to try and run this in a solo legendary mission, be my guest. It's not the ideal way to do it, though. You're probably better off with a rifle build or a negotiator's build. There's better ways for the missions, just because the sheer amount of enemies is overwhelming. But in terms of Summit, I can't think of a build I prefer to play than this solo sniping build. I've cleared the hardest floors with this build with all the directives on at the time. I intend on doing it again now that there are even more directives. And it's a really fun and different way to play. I'm obviously a huge advocate for sniper builds, but this has to be my favorite sniper build I've designed just because of how perfectly lined up it is with damage numbers, how it's a perfect combination of damage and sustain, while still giving you that satisfaction of your one-shot headshot kills. I realize I've been rambling about this build for a while, so I think I'm going to call it here. I just had some notes and some talking points I wanted to touch on. I wasn't really following the script, so I'm sure I've missed some stuff. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment, and I'll do my best to answer them. I hope you guys enjoy the build. I hope you have some fun with it, and thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.
I did it.